The waxy drift of candlelight pooled across the polished surface of the Lord Paramount's war table, and Tywin Lannister studied its map of Westeros with the cold tranquility of a jeweler appraising rubies for flaws. Ravens yet whispered in their cages. Parchment rolls lay sun-warmed beside ink that had not dried. He had read Robb Stark's proposal a dozen times, each pass peeling away another layer of sentimentality to expose the bare alloy of advantage beneath. Marriage. Alliance. An end to years of bleeding gold and soldiers into the stony valleys of the Trident and the whispering green of the Riverlands. Yet what meaning had vows in a realm where oaths broke beneath the boot of expedience? Tywin's lips tightened into a thin line. Across the map the lion pins gleamed, marking his hosts. A vast crescent spanning Harrenhal to Maidenpool, stretching thin along the Red Fork's meandering braid. Gray direwolf sigils had been moved, too, by a steward's trembling hand. Pennants clustered at Moat Cailin, others hunting through the neck, another brace lingering at Riverrun. Tywin redirected their placement, imagining how soon they would stand with him rather than against. Bloodless conquests pleased a frugal man's heart. Outside the Solar's shuttered windows, the sun dipped toward the western hills, and the waters of the Tumblestone sparkled like the facets of dull-cut diamonds. The siege of Riverrun would soon tighten again. Trebuchets groaned in their timber harness as oxen drew them to new firing pits. But if Edmure Tully yielded his niece, then Riverrun's walls would echo only with silence. Tywin felt the echo already. A hush, a stillness, an order restored. Maester Pycelle shuffled near the doorway, the scroll of Robb Stark's Pact cradled in folded sleeves. The aged Maester's breath wheezed with every small reverence. "Shall I draft a reply, my lord?" Tywin's gold-flecked eyes moved from map to man. "Words are wind, Grand Maester. It is deeds that weigh upon the scale. Yet, yes, inform the young wolf that House Lannister will accept his terms, on condition that the wedding be solemnized within the moon's turn, in the sept at Riverrun, and that Lady Jane remain beneath Lannister protection in the interim." Pycelle bowed until vertebrae cracked like old parchment. "The realm will rejoice, my lord. Peace at last." "Peace." Tywin's reply was a single syllable, cool and mild. "Peace is a castle without walls. Hungry men scale it readily. We grant the North its victories, so they may discover the burden of victory." Torrents of spring rain battered the tower roofs of Riverrun when the ravens arrived. Catelyn Stark lifted the fine loom cloth to blot her cheeks, though the dampness clinging there was born of relief, not grief. Fatigue lined her eyes like fading bruises, yet hope blossomed behind them. Her son's war might end without another hearth left fatherless. She read Tywin's seal twice, pulse quickening with disbelief. Then she sought Robb. She found the young wolf within the great hall, sword in hand, sparring with Grey Wind by his feet, though the dire wolf watched more keenly than any master at arms. Ser Brynden Tully stood as referee, a flinty grin softening rough cheeks as he corrected Robb's footwork. Robb lowered his blade at the sight of his mother. The wolf's hackles flattened. Iron-gray eyes studied Catelyn's expression with almost human concern. "What news?" Robb asked, voice hoarse from exertion. She answered with a tremor. "Lord Tywin agrees." 2 words, heavy with futures entire armies could not forge. The sword's tip touched flagstones. Robb Stark, king in the north and Trident, exhaled, shoulders dropping as though he had borne the wall itself. He accepted? He scanned the letter, pale brows drawing close. A wedding at Riverrun within the moon's turn, and Jane to reside under Lannister protection.
Sevindens green banisha.
A gilded leash if ever I tasted one. Yet a leash may buy us breathing room. Robb's jaw set. We shall breathe and steel ourselves for the next blow. But for now, the realm will not drown further in northern blood. He ran fingers through damp hair, streaked the color of fresh chestnuts. "Mother, you will see to the preparations. Ser Brynden, send riders to Moat Cailin and the twins. Walder Frey must consent to cross our men south for the betrothal." Catelyn clasped her son's hand. It felt cold despite the hearth's roaring fire. "This is the choice of a king grown wise by war," she whispered. But wisdom, as they would learn, demanded tribute. In King's Landing, the Iron Throne's barbs glistened under smoke-choked torches, and Joffrey Baratheon lounged upon it with a sullen boredom. Queen Regent Cersei shared news of the peace with the small council, her words dripping the bitter honey of forced compliance. Only Tyrion Lannister appeared intrigued, eyes narrowed, mind racing past the walls of politics into chambers where real power slept. Father believes the wolf's pelt worth more on the lion's back than nailed to a river gate, Tyrion said lightly. I suppose he means to shear Stark pride for our winter cloaks. Father means to end this war, Cersei corrected, though her lips curled. The coffers cannot bleed for every dead Tully Bannerman or burned field of barley. Joffrey drummed clawed fingertips on an armrest. I would rather mount Robb Stark's head on a spike beside Sansa's traitor brothers. A marriage feels dull. Tyrion's smile was small and sharp, so dull that Bravo's lends at 10% less interest these days. Peace pleases coin. He ignored his sister's glare, picturing the Iron Bank's envoys smiling like well-fed weasels. Varys fluttered lace sleeves. Yet any knot tied by Lord Tywin may strangle as it secures. We must watch the wolf groom. Wolves occasionally bite hands bearing wedding garlands. I hope he tries, Joffrey sniffed. Let him choke on a hand's width of red keep steel. Tyrion saw the danger sooner. A northern prince in the lion's lair was also a hostage in plain sight. But a caged wolf might still howl truths that echoed in the hearts of every commoner north of the neck. Tywin would counter with pageantry, with processions of smiling lords and ladies kneeling before Lannister largesse. Yet the Stark honor was an ember. Bury it in velvet and it still glowed. Tyrion tapped 2 fingers to his lips and began planning for contingencies. Lady Jane Westerling had never stepped inside the Red Keep before the day riders arrived to collect her. She clutched a cloak of gray lambswool, embroidered hastily with a white sundrop flower, the sigil of her mother's house, newly elevated by Lannister gold. Her mother, Lady Cybele, wept tears of triumph. Her brother, Ser Reynauld, spoke of destiny. Yet Jane's heart hammered within frail ribs. She belonged at Robb's side, not caged among gilt columns where every smile concealed teeth. The captain of the escort was Ser Kevin Lannister, polite yet unreadable. He offered her a curt nod as she climbed into the litter. His Grace the King in the North will join you soon, my lady. You have House Lannister's word of safety. Safety, she thought, could be a cell with velvet drapes. Jane watched the towers of Riverrun fade behind her silk curtains, each mile southward braiding hope and dread tighter until they were indistinguishable. At the Twins, Walder Frey greeted the prospect of peace with a cackle that rattled his bone-thin chest. So the young wolf trades his sword for a lion's daughter instead of one of mine, he scoffed, stained fingers dancing over the banquet table. Perhaps the lad will send a fat camel to carry my apologies. Robb Stark offered courtesy but no apology. His voice bore the iron tang of winter rivers. Lord Walder, I come not to excuse but to recompense. With my marriage I forfeited your daughter's hands. With peace I offer your sons seats at my council, and your coffers a share of tariffs from Lannisport's silk trade. The old lord's watering eyes narrowed. Such riches were sweet to taste, yet sour in principle. A Frey humbled by Stark generosity. Still, gold weighed more than bruised vanity. Done, he croaked. But I will take 2 of my grandsons as squires at Winterfell. A hostage for a hostage, I think. Robb agreed without hesitation. He had learned that concessions given swiftly could appear magnanimous rather than desperate. In the north, ravens flew like black confetti scattering tidings of ceasefire. At Winterfell, Bran Stark, still weak from the maester's potions, listened to the news from Mira Reed's lips. The cracked courtyard rang with drills again. Archers adjusting fletching, blacksmiths shaping new shoes for Mares no longer marching south. Peace settled upon Winterfell ambivalently. For farmers, it meant sons returning. For smiths, fewer coin. For Bran, it meant letters from Robb thick with the scent of pines, promising a future in which his brother came home crowned not by blood but by laurels. Hodder hummed while arranging furs near Bran's bed. Outside, Snowmelt dripped from stone monsters flanking the gatehouse. Bran closed his eyes and saw, in a rush of green sight, the red keep glittering under sun, and a she-wolf pacing its corridors, jaws parted. Peace was never silent. It prowled restless as storms across a calm sea. Within the sept at Riverrun, Tywin stood beside Robb as Septon Sayer droned vows. The Queen Regent watched from the gallery, crimson skirts pooling. The air stank of myrrh and damp stone. Catelyn wept quietly. Edmure Tully's jaw clenched, his pride bruised by surrendering the seat of his house to his niece's wedding. The music of rake and fiddle rose trembling. Robb lifted Jane's veil. Their eyes met, hers shimmering with unspoken love, his flickering with valor and apprehension. They kissed, and the hall erupted in cheers, Lannister and Stark men raising goblets in uneasy unison. The direwolf gray wind patted at Robb's heel, head low, as though scenting secret rot beneath sweet blossoms. Tywin allowed the applause, then lifted a hand. Silence fell sharp as a sword's edge. "By this union," he declared, voice echoing off pillars, "the realm draws breath anew. Let all lords bow to harmony forged not by steel's shriek, but by the softer strength of faith between houses." The crowd chorused assent. Yet Tyrion, watching from the shadows, felt the words cling like cobwebs. Delicate, easily torn. Feasts stretched long into the night, tables sagging beneath herbed boar and pomegranate duck. Stark bannermen muttered at Lannister boasts. Lannister knights sneered at northern manners. But wine dulled suspicion, and minstrels drowned dissent. Jaime Lannister, freed from Riverrun's dungeons as a token of goodwill, roamed with a chalice in hand, golden hair unkempt. He halted beside Catelyn Stark, who stiffened. "One good hand, Lady Stark," he drawled, raising the stump of his other arm, bandaged anew. "One is enough to raise a cup to peace." She met his gaze, blue steel meeting tarnished gold. "If peace means children sleep in their beds rather than in graves, I will raise 2 hands, Ser Jaime. Even yours." She touched the rim of his chalice, clinking gently. He smirked, yet an ember of respect kindled behind his sardonic smile. Across the hall, Tywin spoke in low tones with Ser Kevan and Pycelle. They tallied grain stores, new levies, trade agreements sealed by signatures still damp. Victory came in ledgers as surely as on battlefields. Days later, the royal procession departed Riverrun. Jane journeyed south with her lion guard, Robb beside her at the column's head and Grey Wind trotting behind. Catelyn watched them vanish down the old King's Road, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her heart felt like a fragile bird caged in ribs of glass. Lord Edmure approached. "You trust Tywin's honor?" "I trust my son," she answered. "Honor may bend, but love is stubborn." Edmure sighed. "Stubborn hearts often invite arrows." In campfires stretching league after league, soldiers murmured about this unlikely accord. Some welcomed rest. Others feared their struggles devalued. Northmen spat when told they must march home without vengeance for bannermen slain at the Whispering Wood. Riverlords whispered of restitution never paid for broken levees, burnt orchards. Meanwhile, the Westerland's hosts resented gold spent ransoming Starks who had burned their holdfasts. Peace, they agreed, cost more than war. Reservoirs of resentment pooled unseen beneath the treaty's veneer. Tywin meant to channel them, not dam them. For now, he issued coins for widows' relief and promised roads mended. A lion's paw extended in generosity often concealed claws. Deep beneath the Red Keep, Shae waited in a candlelit chamber, her shadow dancing on sandstone walls. When Tyrion arrived, she traced his scar idly. "Your father will enjoy having the Northern King for a son-in-law," she purred. "Enjoyment is a luxury," Tyrion replied, pouring 2 cups of arbor gold. "Father accepts the cost of preserving Lannister ascendancy. If our coffers bled further, the faith or the Iron Bank might rise to twist the knife." Shae sipped. "And you? What do you gain?" Tyrion tilted his head. "Time. While the great houses play at in-laws, I secure grain stores, relieve the city's orphanages, and coax the small folk to remember the imp's kindness when winter gnaws." He set aside his cup. Yet there is a crack forming, Shay. A gulf between the peace celebrated and the peace felt. If my family mismanages victory, that gulf becomes a chasm no amount of gold can bridge. She leaned forward. So you prepare a bridge of your own. Aye, and guardrails, lest any lions tumble. The road south skirted the ruin of Harrenhal, its charred towers like broken fangs against a smoky sky. Robb ordered a halt and walked the courtyard where Aegon's dragonfire still haunted scorched stones. Jane followed, cloak fluttering. She placed a hand on Robb's, newly ringed in Lannister gold. I fear the future, she confessed. Your bannermen glared at me during the wedding feast as though I'd slain their kin. Must love always bleed? Robb stroked her knuckles. Love, no. Pride, yes. But pride can be soothed by deeds. When we return to Winterfell, we will show them how the lion does not feast upon the wolf but stands guard at his gate. They climbed a cracked staircase to a parapet, wind lashing her hair. Night's first stars glittered. Robb pointed south. Down there lies the field of the Redgrass, where Igor rivers fought for a crown. Thousands died, the realm still fracturing. But tonight no swords cross in anger. That is our triumph. Gray wind howled below, a low mournful note. Robb frowned. He sensed something. They found nothing amiss. Yet in the shadows of collapsed keeps, half-forgotten hatred stirred. Sigils burnt from shields, names scratched upon cell walls by men who had died cursing both wolf and lion. At the wall, ravens delivered peace to Lord Commander Jeor Mormont. He read the letter by torch glow, the wind beyond the curtain wall carrying hints of frost flowers across frozen stone. Jon Snow stood beside him, black cloak snapping. So your brother weds the Lannister niece, Mormont murmured. A clever gamble. Robb always believed swords alone cannot win every fight, Jon said. Yet within him, a knot of unease tightened. The Lannisters seldom offered olive branches without poison upon the thorns. Samwell Tarly, present with quill still inked, whispered, Peace is good. Jon stared northward, where auroras fluttered like torn banners across star-riddled void. For the realm, perhaps, but the dead walk. They care little for marriages. The thought chilled him deeper than any wind. Back in King's Landing, Sansa Stark watched the royal barges return bearing Robb and Jane. Her heart hammered, joy mixing with dread. She wore a gown of ivory damask, hair woven with pearl pins, Cersei's gift, meant to display northern humility before Lannister splendor. When Robb disembarked at the mud gate, he gathered Sansa into his arms, lifting her from the ground. Tears streaked her cheeks. Brother, she breathed, I feared never to see you again. And leave you here among vipers? He teased gently. The wolf returns for his own. Cersei stepped forward with a regal smile. His Grace King Joffrey welcomes his good brother to the capital. She inclined her head the barest measure. May the seven bless this union. Robb's answering nod was equally measured. The dance of civility had begun. Feasts, tournaments, and spectacles followed. Noble ladies gasped over Robb's prowess at joust, though he rode only to first blood. Jane's gentle courtesy charmed the small folk. Coins rained whenever her litter passed. Yet beneath the pageantry, tensions simmered. Lannister knights bumped northern sworn swords in corridors. Insults traded in low voices. Knives glimmered too freely at alehouses off the street of silk. Tywin convened councils daily. He tasked Robb to oversee joint patrols of gold cloaks and northern guards, presenting unity. Robb accepted, though each directive reminded him of chains disguised as honors. Catelyn, newly arrived, served as mediator between queen and regent, her composure strained like glass beneath hammer beats. Tyrion visited her one dusk. Lady Stark, I would speak of your daughter's well-being. She stiffened. You have Sansa safe by your measure. And Arya? He asked. Pain flared in her eyes. Lost. Tyrion sighed. War scatters more than soldiers. If peace holds, I will send coin and men to scour the riverlands for her trace. Why? Because I would have the North as an ally in truth. not in parchment. He left before she shaped reply. As summer's heat swelled the city, rumors slithered through the alleys. Stories of Tywin's secret designs, of northern malcontents rallying at White Harbor, of Frey forces amassing at the Twins despite peace. Ravens to Winterfell told of Bolton men refusing disarmament. The cracks deepened. On the morning a Septon found butchered in Flea Bottom, his throat opened by what witnesses claimed was a wolf's head blade. Joffrey demanded Robb answer for northern savagery. Robb bristled. Tywin calmed them with crisp orders, launching an inquiry led by Ser Jaime and Ser Brynden. Yet whispers spread that the Septon's sermon had condemned Lannister crimes, not Stark. Northmen muttered of scapegoats. Lannisters scoffed at play-acting innocence. Tyrion recognized the scent, orchestrated discord. But whose hands stirred the stew? While hunts were arranged in the Kingswood, Tywin summoned Grand Maester Pycelle quietly. "The Dornish send envoys," he said. "Their prince inquires whether the justice for Elia Martell yet lives in King's Landing's veins." Pycelle dabbed perspiration. "Your son Jaime's absolution has not pleased them." Tywin's eyes narrowed. "Then we must offer them new truths. Tell Oberyn Martell that the Lion and Direwolf now stand united. Should Dorne assail us, they will face two kings." "Two," Pycelle croaked. Tywin's mouth curved in a fractional smile. "Joffrey remains the Iron Throne's rightful king. Yet a Stark king at his side is a sword in the hand rather than at the throat." He dismissed the maester, gaze drifting to the window, where banners of crimson and gold fluttered beside gray and white. The colors merged in wind-tossed knots. For all his calculation, Tywin could not predict every gust. In the God's Wood of the Red Keep, Robb knelt before the weirwood transplanted centuries before, scarlet leaves whispering like secrets. Sansa prayed beside him, hands clasped. Jane waited a few steps away, respectful. "My Pat. H feels narrower each day." Robb confessed softly to the heart tree. "Peace sets snares as surely as war." The carved face bled resin tears. Nightingales chirped beyond its boughs. Sansa touched his shoulder. "Father once said a battlefield's clarity ends once the swords are sheathed. Then comes the quagmire of words." He smiled ruefully. "I would trade 100 pitched battles for one council meeting." They rose. The torches along garden paths flickered, casting flutters of brightness. Gray wind paced near the archway. Suddenly he froze, ears pricking, growl rumbling. In shadows, a cloaked figure darted, steel glinting. Robb shoved Sansa aside as a quarrel hissed past, embedding in oak. Guards thundered forth. The assassin fled into labyrinthine corridors. Robb's eyes blazed. This city grins while sharpening knives behind its teeth. Jane clutched his arm. "Will we ever see Winterfell again?" "Yes," he vowed. "And soon." The failed assassination shook King's Landing like a tremor. Gold cloaks scoured taverns. Varys loosed his little birds. Tyrion sifted through bribes and threats until clues pointed to a Sellsword company recently arrived from Pentos, one under discreet contract of House Bolton. When he shared this with Tywin, the Lord of Casterly Rock showed no visible surprise. "Let Roose Bolton claw for relevance," he said. "The flayed man feasts upon fear. The wolf and lion together shall devour him in turn." Tyrion was not reassured. Each threat remedied birthed new curses. On the night of the harvest feast, when lanterns floated upon the Blackwater like scattered stars, Robb approached Tywin in the throne room. Tywin stood alone before a mosaic of Aegon's conquest, studying dragonfire rendered in colored glass. "My lord," Robb began, respectful, "I would ride north within the fortnight. Winterfell awaits its king. My banners must know peace holds." Tywin inclined his head. "You will take a royal escort, of course. The road is treacherous." "Only my own guard," Robb countered. "The North mistrusts southern escorts." Tywin's eyes narrowed. "As you wish, but remember, the pact binds us. Should any northern lord rise against the throne, the lion will answer in kind." Robb's answer was quiet. "And if any southern lord rises against the north, The wolf will not cower. Their gazes locked, ice and gold. Then Tywin turned, cloak swirling, and climbed the iron throne dais, pausing as though to measure its weight. Robb departed with measured strides. The hall felt colder for their passing. Ravens soared again. Lords Karstark, Umber, and Manderley prepared seats for their king's return. Bolton's meanwhile fortified the dread fort. Freys sharpened blades behind closed castle doors, while across the narrow sea, sell sails awaited coin yet unpaid. Tyrion sat at his desk, quill poised. He drafted letters to commanders who might stem unrest. Brienne of Tarth, Jon Connington in exile, even Stannis on Dragonstone. Though that letter he burned, understanding Stannis's honor was a blade that cut both halves of a lie. Shay found him at dawn, ink blotting his fingers. "The city sleeps while you toil," she murmured. "I make bridges," he replied, "before others burn them." She placed a kiss on his forehead. "Then I will fetch timber." Robb left King's Landing at sunrise, gray cloak billowing, Sansa riding behind with a retinue bound for Winterfell. Jane remained, though her tears fell openly as she watched his column depart across the Rose Road. "Come back soon," she whispered. Robb's hand rose. He made the gesture of the direwolf, a silent promise. Gray wind loped at his stirrup. The king's banner streamed against morning blue, a wolf crowned in frost. Cersei watched from a balcony, arms crossed. When the wolf's tail vanishes, the city will exhale. Tywin joined her. "Do not mistake departure for weakness. The north may appear distant, yet its claws span leagues." Cersei's reply was a brittle laugh. "And the lion's fangs grow dull with age?" Tywin's gaze hardened. "Mine remain sharp enough to sever a daughter's tongue." Cersei stiffened. Silence pooled. Weeks later, at Maidenpool, Robb's column met a messenger bleeding from arrow wounds. Bolton riders had attacked a supply caravan near the neck. Angry murmurs rose among northern soldiers. Lord Umber demanded retaliation. Robb ordered caution. Yet news spread south with wildfire haste. At King's Landing, Tywin's brow furrowed as he read the Raven's scroll. At the Dread Fort, Roose Bolton smiled thinly, sampling the taste of uncertainty. Winter's first frosts touched Winterfell's fields when Robb crossed the drawbridge. Bran rolled forward in a wheeled chair to greet him. Rickon darted past Shaggydog's wary growl to fling himself against Robb's legs. Laughter rang across the bailey. For one breath, peace felt true. But ravens would not rest. From White Harbor came word of Ironborn raiders testing alliances. From the Eyrie, Lisa Arryn demanded explanation for the North's rapprochement with the killers of Jon Arryn. From Riverrun, Edmure reported Frey levies drilling again. Robb gathered his lords in the Great Hall, banners rippling above. "We have peace in name," he told them, voice echoing off wolf-carved beams. "Now we must forge peace indeed. Harbor grievances beneath blankets, starve them, freeze them. Otherwise winter will find the North feuding, and no wall tall enough shall keep the snow at bay." They listened. Some nodded. Others glanced at each other warily. Each moon's turn that followed layered fresh complexity. Tywin pushed trade pacts with Bravos, funding reconstruction in the Riverlands. Robb negotiated mutual defense with Manderley fleets patrolling the Shivering Sea. Jane, pregnant by the second harvest, wrote letters home praising the scent of spruce in Winterfell's courtyards. Sansa tutored Rickon in courtly diction, though he preferred chasing the direwolves through crypt gardens. Yet Roose Bolton, nursing ambition, wove alliances with Lord Walder Frey, promising compensation for slighted honor. In candlelit secrecy, they drafted a different pact. One in ink blacker than churned peat, one promising Bolton overlordship of the North with Frey wardenship of the Trident, should the Lions favor pivot. They would strike at Moat Cailin during the King's progress south for Jane's confinement in King's Landing. Bolton's parchment bore a seal, a flayed man above a lion's tail. Tywin never saw it, yet he felt ripples in the lettered wind. He ordered more scouts on the King's Road, more spies within Frey ranks. But cunning brewed faster than caution. In the year following the peace, a hush blanketed Westeros, deceptive as calm seas before storms. Small folk toasted the union of lion and wolf. Harvests stabilized. Septons preached reconciliation. Yet across the narrow sea, exiled lords eyed Westeros's new order with appetites rekindled. In the Red Waste, a silver-haired queen watched ships slip along horizons and murmured of dragons. The Game of Thrones had not ended. Its board merely rotated. Alliances sown in necessity would ripen or rot under winter's breath. When the snows came, each vow would stand trial, each friendship weighed upon frosted scales. Tywin Lannister believed he guided destiny with a lion's sure stride. Robb Stark believed love could temper steel. Roose Bolton believed any hide could be flayed to reveal truth. And across every hearth, whispered prayers rose. Some for peace everlasting, others for the swift return of war's clarifying blaze. The tale would unfurl long beyond the ink still drying on their marriage pact, its threads tightening around every beating heart from Dorne's red mountains to the wall's frozen ramparts. For now, under twin banners clasped in uneasy harmony, the realm exhaled, poised like a stag before the hunter's arrow. Living, yet uncertain whether the silence portended dawn, or the shudder of strings drawn taut. And thus, the first chapter of their fragile concord ends, not with a clang of swords, but the thrum of possibilities vibrating like distant thunder across Westeros's ever-watchful skies. The wind off the shivering sea clawed at the ramparts of Winterfell, flinging pellets of half-melted snow against granite blocks still blackened from the Ironborn's torches years before. Robb Stark stood upon the gallery above the yard, hands clamped round the crenellations until the cold bit through leather and into bone. Gray wind stalked back and forth beside him, muzzle lifted to taste the scent of distant storms. Somewhere below, the clang of hammers echoed as smiths reforged hinges and spearheads. Small, steady labors meant to remind a kingdom that the North endured. It had been a fortnight since the king's return, and still the castle felt strange to him. Familiar corridors had grown narrower, as though the stone itself resented every compromise struck beneath southern suns. He threaded those passages nightly, listening to frost drip into buckets, to servants' hushed debates about Fry levies or Bolton patrols. Each whisper weighed heavier than the mailed gauntlets he had once rejoiced to bear. Tonight he had summoned his council to the Great Hall. Catelyn, Ser Brynden, Lord Greatjon Umber half-drunk on mellow ale, Lady Galbart Glover in widow's grey, Wyman Manderly's son Ser Wyllis, cheeks still plump though moon turns on campaign had trimmed his waist. And in the shadows, Maester Luwin's successor, a thin lad from Old Town named Garmin who chewed his lower lip whenever the Lord's voices rose. Rickon perched cross-legged on a bench, stubbornly refusing the bed Catelyn offered, while Bran wheeled his chair beside the dais, bright eyes darting between speakers. Robb descended the stair when all were gathered. His cloak of winter wolfskin trailed behind him. Light from the hearth danced along the brass brooch shaped like twin crowns, a gift from Tywin's goldsmiths. He unpinned it before he spoke, setting it on the long table where it shone like molten sunset amid rough wooden cups. Lord Tywin calls this the seal of our accord, he said, voice low but clear. Yet peace is not a bauble to be displayed. It is held only so long as the hands that made it do not unclench. Murmurs rumbled. Greatjon banged a meaty fist. Then let the lions keep their toys south o' the neck. Winterfell needs iron in her walls, not trinkets on her king. Robb allowed a nod. Which is why we will rebuild the east wall before first snows. Lord Glover, your men no stone. Oversee the masons. Ser Wyllis, your father's ships bring timber. Beam and board for roofs yet scorched. The young knight bowed. White Harbor stands eager to serve, your grace. Lady Glover searched her king's face. And what of the Boltons? Carrion crows circle nearer lakelands each day. My scouts found flayed corpses nailed to a beach 2 leagues south of Torrhen Square. No banners, but no doubt whose work. Catelyn's hands twisted in her lap. Bolton boldness grows while the twins ring with Fry steel. They test our resolve.
Robb met Galbart's case.
I ride for the dread fort at fortnight's end, with 2,000 picked men and grey wind at my side. I will look Roose Bolton in the eye and remind him of the oaths he swore. Greatjon barked laughter. Better to string him up and flay him for a change.
Ser Brinden grunted.
If the king wants peace, he must keep the blade sheathed. Yet a blade too long unsheathed gathers rust. He leaned on the pommel of his sword, Dark Sister's Riverland substitute called Fishspine. Take hostages, Robb. Demand his bastard Ramsay remain at Winterfell when you depart. Ramsay, Rickon spat from the bench. He burned our fields. Shaggy Dog would have his throat. The Black Wolf's growl answered from the shadows, deep and menacing. Bran laid a calming hand on his brother's sleeve. If Ramsay stays here, we watch him. That is safer than leaving him free behind our backs. Robb's jaw tightened. Hostages we shall have, yet I doubt Roose parts with his blood easily. Maester Garman, draft letters, courteous in word, firm in weight. Escort them to the Dread Fort in advance. The Maester nodded, quill already scratching. Catelyn rose. Take caution, my son. Tywin Lannister will hear of every hoofbeat you make. He may applaud a show of strength, or resent the wolf's claws extended. He will understand, Robb said. If he values this peace as he claims, he will not begrudge the North securing its foundations. In King's Landing, the dawn broke red behind the spires of the Great September, turning its marble domes the color of fresh wounds. Tywin Lannister regarded the horizon from a balcony high in the Tower of the Hand, sleeves of crimson velvet folded across his chest. Below, the city stirred. Stevedores shouting at Dragon Gate, beggars shuffling for positions outside Baelor's statue, gold cloaks rousting drunks from the flea-bottom gutters. All the noises of empire at uneasy rest. He had read The Raven from Winterfell before sunrise. A polite notice, Robb Stark styling himself Lord Paramount of the North and Trident, and announcing a progress to the Dreadfort. Tywin recognized the message beneath the ink. The wolf tests his leash. Tyrion entered unannounced, limping slightly from a night spent in brothels that offered more conversation than comfort. He sipped watered wine. Our royal cousin Joffrey rides to Storm's End next week. Crown tourneys, smiling small folk, barrels of debts. You will accompany? I will remain, Tywin answered. Someone must keep the kingdom solvent while the boy parades. Tyrion grinned. Which boy? Joffrey or Robb? One plays at king with tilt and trumpet. The other marches to the Dreadfort with steel inside velvet. Tywin's eyes narrowed. Bolton will bend. If he does not, the wolf and lion together cut him down. And the phrase? The phrase remain tools. Walder brandishes his insult like a rusty dagger. He will strike only if given opportunity. Tywin considered the rooftops glittering. Which is why we must not grant it. Tyrion set down his cup. And if opportunity arises from some accident? A butchered caravan? A vanished cousin? Peace is a house of cards, father, and the wind rises. Then we brace the walls. Tywin turned. I dispatched Lord Randall Tarley to the Trident with 3,000 disciplined men, ostensibly to assist releveling dikes and levees. In truth, to watch the phrase and crush revolt before it sparks. Tyrion snorted. Tarley sees heresy in laughter and treason in any voice north of the Blackwater. He will keep the Trident quiet. Aye, quiet as a graveyard. A graveyard is peaceful, Tywin said. The living can rebuild. Tyrion bowed lightly. As you will, my lord. He paused at the door. When the winds rise too high, even graveyards yield bones. He left before the older man replied. At Riverrun, Lord Edmure stood ankle-deep in river mud supervising repairs to breached embankments. Fishers cursed as stones tumbled from barges. Masons argued with levy sergeants over scaffolds. Peace, Edmure decided, was harder labor than siege. A raven fluttered down, black wings spattered with clay. Its missive bore the sigil of House Fry, quartered blue and gray. He slit the wax with a dirty fingernail and scanned the cramped script. Walder's heir, Ser Ryman, demanded transit across Riverrun spans for a column escorting grain to Seaguard. 20 wagons, 500 men-at-arms, and a modest flight of crossbowmen for defense. Edmure read the line twice. Crossbowmen for grain? He called for parchment. If the Freys wished his bridges, they would come unarmed save for spears stacked in wagons. He would not host a host of quarrels staring at his walls. Still, he smelled test in the request, like trout left too long in sun. Blackfish must be told. Across the narrow sea, in the sun-scorched port of Pentos, sails painted salamander green furled beside cracked stone quays. Beneath the awnings of the broken anvil inn, Dario Naharis threw a polished coin upon a map. The wolf joins the lion, he chuckled in low Valyrian. Who wagers the dragon shall join the kraken next? A man shrouded in saffron robes, Illyrio Mopatus, smiled over his gilded beard. Westeros churns when old enemies embrace. The wise wait until churn becomes tide. He traced the coastline of the Seven Kingdoms, finger pausing at King's Landing. A queen with 3 dragons will find soft underbelly in that peace, and a fat magister finds profit. Dario drained a cup of sweet wine. Then we sail east to Meereen, or west to war? Illyrio's ringed hand closed on the map edge. We sail where dragons lead. For now, we collect swords, sell sails, and secrets. He rolled the parchment, eyes glittering. When the lion gnaws the wolf, we deliver the dragon tooth. 2 days' ride south of the Dreadfort, Robb's column-crossed fields still charred from Bolton torches. Spring grass pushed through blackened earth in tufts like sickly hair. Villagers emerged from snowburrow huts to stare, gaunt faces painted with ash against biting winds. Robb dismounted to speak with them. He handed out coin from Winterfell's coffers, salt beef from wagons, a promise of thatch deliveries for next thaw. They knelt, though some glared past him at the Bolton banners rippling from his outriders' spears. That night, the king's tent glowed with candlelight. Galbart Glover laid a map across trestles. Bolton keeps near 3,000 inside his walls, she said. Garrison swollen with Sel's words. Tall heart deserters, Crannig reavers, even a clutch o' sell-sail crews from Loreth. Not the numbers to defy us in open field, but enough for murder in corridors. Brynden leaned over her shoulder. A siege of the Dreadfort in deep autumn favors defenders. We did not bring rams. We bring hearts and hostages, Robb replied. We walk through his gates tomorrow in peace. If treachery springs, it ends with Bolton's line strangled. Ramsay will not surrender, Galbart warned. He enjoys quoting flaying lore to prisoners. Robb's hand stroked Grey Wind's scruff. If he draws steel, my wolf answers. But I would see this realm hold one winter without soaking earth crimson. Outside, snowflakes spiraled like pale moths. Within, tension crackled. Roose Bolton welcomed the king at dawn from atop the Dreadfort's battlements. Long cloak of pink satin swirling above bastions stained brown from old blood. His face remained mask-pale, eyes colorless as river ice. He descended stone steps with measured grace, flanked by his bastard Ramsay, whose smile split his face like a crooked wound. At Bolton's back marched 50 men in flayed-man half-helms, spears tall as birch. Robb rode forward, helm beneath his arm. Lord Bolton, he called, voice carrying across the yard. The king in the north seeks your counsel. Bolton inclined his head exactly the depth due a liege. My king honors this humble holdfast. The Dreadfort is yours. Grey Wind bristled at the gates. Ramsay's eyes glittered. Such a fine beast, he crooned. May I stroke him? Robb's reply cut like northern sleet. He bites, and wolves who bite earn collars, Ramsay murmured, too low for many to hear. Bolton silenced his son with a look so icy it might freeze breath. You must be weary, your grace. Refreshments await. Inside the main hall, ale flowed, yet Robb drank only watered wine. Bolton discussed harvest quotas, White Harbor tariffs, the menace of hill tribes raiding along the rills. Ramsay lounged, tossing a carved knuck bone in the air. Halfway through the feast, Robb laid a scroll upon the table. To secure this peace, he said, I ask for hostages, one of your kin and one trust. A captain. They shall dine at Winterfell as honored guests until spring. Bolton's pale lashes flickered. Hostages? My loyalty stands proven by crimson given beneath your banners at the Green Fork. But your riders stalked our caravan, Great John growled. Ramsay laughed. Caravans sometimes lose their way. Bolton raised a palm, silencing the hall. Of course, your grace. My nephew Demeric's son, Benjen, will ride with you. And Ser Enes Fry, my wife's brother, second hostage. Robb nodded slowly. Accepted. They depart at first light. Bolton's gaze lingered on Grey Wind gnawing a bone by the hearth. Then he smiled, the twitch of lips upon corpse. And will your queen join us this winter? I hear her belly swells with new life. Robb stiffened. Queen Jane remains in Winterfell. She travels not while heavy with child. Wise, Bolton said. Travel is hazardous. Wolves and lions, both large predators. Dinner ended early. That night, as torches guttered in hallways, Grey Wind prowled, ears pricked. Ramsay slipped from his chambers with a hooded lantern. Footsteps muffled. Grey Wind tracked the scent. Sweat mixed with dogskin oil and the copper whiff of sharpened steel. Ramsay halted before the locked kennel where Bolton kept warhounds. Massive mastiffs trained to rip men limb from limb. He turned a key, swung open the gate, whispered, "Hunt!" Grey Wind leapt from darkness, fangs clamping on Ramsay's wrist. The bastard shrieked, dropping the lantern. Oil splashed, flames licking straw. Hounds erupted behind the gate, howling, ramming the barrier. Ramsay's dagger flashed. Grey Wind dodged, dragging him backward. Soldiers came running with pikes. Great John thundered after Robb, blade half-drawn. Fire hissed out under wet furs, but 2 hounds escaped, savaging a groom before arrows dispatched them. Ramsay lay bloodied, arm punctured, eyes burning with hate. Roose arrived last, gaze sweeping embers, wolf, bastard, king. An unfortunate mishap, he said softly. Bastards lack discipline. Robb's voice was ice. Bind his wounds. He rides south tomorrow as third hostage. Ramsay snarled. You cannot cage me like some craven pup. You loosed the hounds, Robb replied. Now learn their collars. Bolton's stoic mask cracked a hair. His nod surrendered more than his son. It ceded initiative. At King's Landing, ravens beat windows of the small council chambers. Tywin unrolled one missive. Bolton hostages taken, Dreadfort pacified. He allowed the hint of approval to warm his thoughts. The wolf shows fangs, but not at my throat. Cersei paced, agitation fretting her features. While you tend northern flea bites, the Iron Bank presses for payment. Our coffers dwindle. Tywin's fingers drummed the table. Interest is cheaper than war. With river tolls reopened and Westerland's mines restored to pre-war yields, we repay within 2 years. But the faith militant, she began, will disband if not provoked. He regarded her. Leave sparrows to chirp. Cersei's eyes narrowed. And the Tyrells? They send honeyed letters praising peace but train twice the usual number of foot at Highgarden. Let them. Tywin folded the raven's parchment. Every field sown with roses is a field not sown with rebellion. When they march, we choose the ground. Tyrion coughed behind a chalice. Provided we know which roses bloom poison. Tywin ignored him. On a gray morning thick with mist, Robb's company departed the Dreadfort. 3 hostages rode within, wrists bound by courtesy silk. Bolton stood atop the gate, cloak snapping. As hooves faded, Maester Wylus approached him. My lord, what shall we do? Roose's gaze remained on the horizon. We wait. When a wolf gnaws your leg, you bide until frost numbs the pain. Then you cut. He descended, footsteps soft. White Harbor's quay bustled when the King's column arrived 10 days later. Robb took audience in Lord Wyman's solar, damp from sea spray though fires roared. The Lord of White Harbor, flesh still ample but eyes sharp, welcomed him with eel pie. After formal courtesies, Wyman shut the door. My king, trade flourishes, he said. Yet rumors swirl of sell sails amassing in sister port salt pans. 3 dozen ships under a Lority banner shaped like a flayed man. They fly no royal standard. Robb frowned. Bolton Reach extends across seas now? Wyman nodded. Coin speaks across water. I have dispatched Manderley longships to shadow them, but warships of the Reach also prowl. Should roses clash with flayed men? Who do we blame? Bolton, Robb said. And by extension, Fry. Wyman's smile slicked like butter. Then war returns. Robb stared at the harbor's fog, where gull calls drifted. The peace he forged felt suddenly thin as ice over deep water. In the Red Keep, Jane sat before a brazier, heavy with child, Sansa reading aloud from a Septon's tale about Nymeria's 1,000 ships. Jane's hands cradled her belly. "If it is a son," she whispered. "Robb wishes to name him Eddard." Sansa smiled softly. Father would smile. Steps echoed. Tyrion entered, bowing. "Your Grace, my lady. Apologies." His mismatched eyes flicked to the Queen's Guard stationed by the door. "May we speak?" Sansa nodded for the guards to wait outside. Jane's brow furrowed. Tyrion offered a sealed letter. "White Harbor warns of Bolton cell sails," he said. "If they strike the Mander's mouth, grain to King's Landing falters. I send word to Lord Tywin and Tarly both." "But," he hesitated. Sansa's voice hardened. "But what? Should war reignite, you must depart south at once. Casterly Rock is defensible." "I will not leave Winterfell's babe under Lannister watch," Jane protested. "You would rather leave him in a city that riots when bread runs short?" Tyrion asked, gentle. "I speak as one who saw the last riot. Men torn apart for a handful of oats." Sansa shivered, remembering. "I will consider," Jane murmured. "That is all I ask." Tyrion bowed again and departed, steps heavy. Ravens reached King's Landing before the Cellsails did. Tywin summoned Randall Tarly via swift riders. Redeploy from the Twins to Maidenpool, blockade salt pans. Cersei objected. Garrison in the Trident would thin, but Tywin silenced her with a raised hand. "We cannot allow foreign banners hostile to our northern ally. Show discipline." Joffrey, bored by governance, named the Cellsail captain cowards and demanded their heads for display, then rode to hunt boar. Nobody pursued his decree. Tyrion watched his father bend the board. Pieces shifted. Tarly's columns, Manderley fleets, Stark outriders. Yet one piece moved unseen, Walder Frey. At the Twins, autumn fog churned around towers like spectral banners. Within the water tower, Walder Frey supped on onion broth, eyes rheumy. His sons lined the hall. Ryman, Stevern's boy Aegon, Merritt slumped with wine. Walder's tongue flicked. "Bolton bleeds," he croaked. "Wolf ties him with silken rope. Tie a stone to the rope, he drowns, I flay the wolf after. But we need lion's leave." Aegon shrugged. "Tywin will never sanction." Walder hammered his cane. "Then we act before he blinks. A wedding feast. Myself remarried again." He cackled. "Invite the king's envoys to witness. Dreadfort men slip inside. Saltpan's Cellsails row upriver under guise of commerce. Then, song ends, silence falls, arrows fly." Ryman swallowed. "Kinslaying, my father? He is wed to Jane Westerling." Walder's teeth clicked. "Kin is coin. Spend it or hoard it. I am old. I wish noise before night." He spat into the broth. "Send ravens. Ramsay shall join us for merriment." In dark corners, crossbowmen oiled strings. Winter settled early. Snow rolled across the King's Road like white tide, drifts burying milestones. Robb hastened his return journey, hostages carted in heated wagons. At night, he dreamt of wolves fettered by golden chains. Each morning, he rose colder. North of the Twins, a scout galloped into camp, face blue with chill. "Fry summons, your grace. Lord Walder weds the Lady Alex of House Hay 3 days hence. Requests your presence." Great John spat into the fire. "He never weds without coin in mind. Smells trap." Robb stared at the parchment. Courtesy demanded a reply. Security demanded refusal. He studied Bolton hostages. Benjen Bolton shivering, Ser Enys scowling, Ramsay silent with eyes half-lidded snake green. Bolton's bastard would be fated, Brynden said. Fry and Bolton in one hall, milk curdles. Robb weighed. If I refuse, Walder names slight. He controls the crossing. But Grey Wind snarls at this letter. I trust my wolf. We ride round, suggested Galbart. Take barges at Seaguard. Too slow, Robb said. He lifted eyes to winter sky. We ride to the twins, but under sacred guest right, Fry dares not shed blood. And we bring our own bread and salt if need be. Brynden exhaled. I pray the gods remember their laws. Rickon hugged Shaggy Dog. If they break guest right, we break bones. Bran stared into the flames, heart beating quick, skin goose prickled. He saw flashes, arrows in candlelight, blood upon fretted harp strings, Grey Wind howling behind iron bars. He opened his mouth to speak, but words died. Fear that telling the vision would make it true. Tywin closed his eyes when the raven arrived. Walder's wedding invitation copied to the capital. He felt calculations shift. If the wolf passed beneath the twins' arch, the board pieces condensed. Fry, Bolton, Stark together. Too many knives pointed at one heart. He summoned Cersei, Joffrey, and the council. We dispatch Ser Adam Marbrand with 400 horse to the crossing, he ordered. Present royal congratulations, and remain camped beyond arrow range. Cersei arched a brow. So few. Enough to observe, Tywin said. If catastrophe unfolds, Adam withdraws and the crown's hands stay clean. Tyrion caught his father's eye. They shared unspoken fear. Walder Frey's appetites, Bolton's cruelty, Winter's hunger. When men starve, they bite. Within the twins, Walder's kitchens roasted oxen whole, stuffing bellies with apples and onions. Musicians tuned strings, casks of strong wine lined corridors. Ramsay Bolton arrived day before feast, arm bandaged, grin sewn to cheeks. Walder embraced him like a favorite mongrel. Did the wolf steal your bark? Ramsay whispered. I fetch it back. Night cloaked the Fry castle as Robb's column reached the causeway. Torches flared on battlements, trumpets sounded. Duke moonlight reflected in river eddies drifting beneath. Inside, Robb crossed threshold bearing his own loaf of dark rye, salt pouch at belt. Walder extended bread with trembling hand. Robb accepted, tearing morsel while priests spoke prayers. Hall smelled of venison, cloves, smoke. Jane's absence throbbed like missing limb. Seated at high table flanked by Bolton hostages, Robb forced smiles through courses. Music soared, dancers pranced. Even Gretchen's laughter grew uneasy beneath chandeliers spelled with leering mermaids. Halfway to midnight, when musicians slid into melancholy tune, Walder rose. A gift for my king, he crowed. My grandchildren prepared a pageant. Serving girls hurried forward with large covered platters. Ramsay's eyes gleamed. Bran, in his chair nearby, felt a vision lash him. Steel flashed under silver lids. He gasped, but sound drowned by drums. Robb's hand reached his sword hilt as lids lifted. Nothing but doves burst, flapping frantically. Guests laughed, tension easing. But above, in rafters, crossbowmen not part of any pageant shifted into position. Bran opened his mouth. A string twanged. Robb turned just as bolts slashed across his shoulder, driving him back. Grey Wind's howl exploded. Chaos surged. Bolton men leapt from benches, daggers drawn. Fry guards barred doors. Great John overturned table. Hot wine drenched arrows. Arrows rained like deadly hail. Robb vaulted toward Jory Castle, shielding Bran's chair. Out! He roared. Men scrambled. Catelyn seized a bread knife, screaming. Walder cackled, spittle-flecking beard. The North remembers, so does the crossing. Bolts hammered Grey Wind. The dire wolf crashed backward, blood darkening fur. Bran screamed inside his skull, feeling wolf pain as his own. Robb bellowed, slicing through Fryguard's throat. Fish spine flickered in Blackfish's grip, carving passage. Ramsay seized a torch, igniting draperies. Smoke swirled. Ramsay threw the torch toward the high table. Flame leapt along banners of dire wolf and lion sewn together.
Se Willis mandar lidratge a Branshire, Wells Boonsing.
Outside corridor, Ser Brynden hacked across pikemen, forging route toward the east tower. But crossbow bolts kept coming. Catelyn shoved a platter aside, lunged at Walder with knife against his throat. "Stop!" she screamed, steel nicking sagging jowls. "Call them off or die." Walder's eyes glittered wet. "I can always father more daughters." From shadows, a Fry grandson plunged a spear through Catelyn's back. She sagged, face white with shock, blood seeping between her fingers. Robb saw, time slowed. He roared, carving an arc of crimson, dropping foes. He reached Catelyn as she slid. Her hand grasped his cheek, lips moving, "Forgive!" Then her eyes glazed. Bolts slammed Robb's back. He staggered, but armor held. Gray wind, half dead, dragged itself to stand before its master, snarling. A final volley pierced the wolf's throat. Robb's cry tore the hall. Great John, arrow-riddled, hurled a bench into oncoming frays, then fell atop 3 corpses. Flames clawed rafters. Smoke choked air. Bells rang alarm. Lannister trumpets beyond walls. Robb seized Bran's chair handles, pushing through side door with Blackfish clearing. They burst onto parapet above inner yard. Snow fell heavy, muffling screams. Ser Eni's Fry hostage grappled Manderly guard, yelling that he was kin. An Umber axeman split his skull. Robb pressed a dagger into Bran's hand. "Stay with Uncle." He turned to Brynden. "Get my brothers clear." "And you," Brynden demanded. "I end this." Robb sprinted toward tower where Walder's banners fluttered, cloak blazing where sparks caught. As he ran, Ramsay stepped from stairwell, flaying knife gleaming. They clashed, steel ringing. Ramsay's smile bled as Robb's sword bit his thigh, but he slashed back, carving flesh from Robb's forearm. They circled in drifting snow. Below, Lannister horns sounded again. Ser Adam's horsemen battered the gate, outraged at guest right broken. Crossbows answered. Inside tower, Walder scuttled upward, cane clacking. Robb kicked Ramsay aside, bounding stairs 3 at a time. On the roof, wind howled, snow swirling like white ashes. Walder turned, eyes wide. Robb stalked forward, sword dripping. "By the old gods and the new, you are forfeit." Walder opened his mouth to wheeze retort, but arrow sprouted from his chest. Ramsay limped onto rooftop behind Robb, bow still raised. "No wolf deserves final blow," he hissed. Robb spun as Ramsay knocked again. They lunged simultaneously. Ramsay's arrow loosed at same instant Robb's sword pierced his belly. Arrow thudded into Robb's ribs, sliding between plates. Pain exploded. Ramsay coughed blood, collapsing. Robb yanked free his blade, staggered. Walder lay wheezing on stones, blood pooling. Below, gates crashed inward. Lannister horse thundered across courtyard, cutting frays and boltons with cold precision. Robb knelt by Walder, pressed sword tip to throat. "For my mother," he whispered, voice thick with blood. He drove blade through aged flesh. Snowflakes hissed upon hot gore. Robb tore arrow from his side. Blood spurted. He swayed. Below, horns sounded stark motif, his outriders seizing stables. Manderly men raising wolf banner beside lion. Smoke billowed from hall windows. Brynden emerged onto roof with Bran clinging to his neck, Manderly men behind. "The castle falls," he shouted. Robb turned. Bran's eyes widened at blood on his brother. "Robb!" "I'm fine, Robb lid." He sheathed sword, reached to ruffle Bran's hair, but hand trembled. Brynden threw a cloak over Robb's shoulders. "We must ride." Fry archers still prowl the walls. They descended, passing Ramsay's corpse, eyes glassy. Dawn bled pale across the tumblestone when Robb's host encamped leagues south of the twins. Fires flickered. Wounded groaned. Lannister horse formed pickets. Peace regained by steel. Tyrion had arrived with Marbrand, face set in grief at Catelyn's death. In a healer's tent, Maester Garmin probed Robb's wound. Barbed head tore through lung membrane. He poured broth of milk of the poppy. Rest or bleed within. Robb pushed bowl aside. How many lost? Great John dead, Galbart wounded, 200 northern men slain, near equal frays and Boltons butchered, grey wind buried in frost. But Bran and Rickon lived. Benjen Bolton hostage now renounced his house before Robb's pavilion, begging mercy. Robb closed eyes. Send ravens to Tywin. Walder and Bolton broke guest right. They are traitors to both thrones. Tyrion cleared throat. Father will not mourn Walder, but Bolton, his levies still hold rills, Hornwood, scattered garrisons. A cornered flayer claws deep. Then we flay him of lands and life, Robb rasped. Pain lanced through ribs. I ride east to Seaguard for Maester's salves, then home. Winterfell must stand strong. North bleeds. Tyrion considered. Lannister coin will subsidize repairs, and 100 soldiers escort at least until you cross the neck. Robb managed tight smile. My thanks. The wolf's trust is bruised, imp, but not broken. You saved my sister by marriage, Tyrion said softly. I repay debts. Outside, Bran stared at smoke curling into pastel dawn. He felt hollow, yet inside that hollow something ancient stirred, root-deep anger dwarfed by cold resolve. He whispered to fate. No more whispers. Thunder now. In the capital Tywin read his son's raven by green candlelight. Cersei raged. Bolton's traitors, Freys butchered. Guest right broken shamed crown. Tywin's thoughts moved beyond shame. With Walder dead, Frey ascendancy shattered. With Bolton branded oathbreaker, northern balance toppled. He must mend or reap war everlasting. He drafted edicts. Roose Bolton named rebel, lands forfeit. Wardenship of the North confirmed to House Stark. Crown grants coin to rebuild. Riverlords freed from crossing tolls. He sealed scroll with lion wax. When Tyrion returned weeks later, Tywin met him in the Hand Solar. The war is ended, he said. Tyrion poured wine. It ends anew every day. Tywin almost smiled. True, but today the lion and the wolf hunt in tandem again. Bolton hides. We flush him come spring. And if dragons arrive? Tyrion asked. Tywin's gaze shifted to the far east, beyond the narrow sea shimmering on the map's edge. Then we hunt dragons. Snow deepened across Winterfell by the time Robb limped through the gatehouse, a mantle of white on shoulders. Jane waddled into his arms, tears and laughter mingling. Bran watched from rampart, feeling the weirwood whisper of futures writ in blood and frost and fire. He saw a boy yet unborn, eyes gray and gold, cradled in a mother's arms. He saw a winged shadow fall across the wall. He saw a lion kneeling before a dire wolf crowned in ice. But for the moment, the yard resounded with simple mortal joy. A king returned, a child quickening, a family battered yet unbroken. Robb raised his father's sword toward the clouded sun. Voices rang, the king in the north. And for one heartbeat, peace felt possible again. Even with winter's roar beyond the horizon, even with dragons stirring across the sea. For peace, like hope, is a blade. Fragile, shining, and kept sharp only by the hands willing to bleed for it. The wolves of Winterfell howled again that night, the kind of low, rolling ululation that sets horses tossing in their stalls and makes even the bravest man glance for the spear at his bedside. It rose from the kennels first, one voice, then two, then all together until the sound braided into the sleet-hissed darkness above the godswood. In the queen's chamber, Jane Westerling started awake, a hand clasped over her stomach as if to still the restless babe inside. Beyond the shutters, the air rattled with ice pellets, and between those sharp rattles came the wolves' thick-throated warning, older than keeps or crowns. Maester Garmin arrived moments later, panting up the stair with a small cask of calming draught tucked beneath one arm. "The king is abroad on the ramparts, your grace," he reported, voice rasping from cold lungs. He took Ser Brynden and Ser Wylis to parley with the men of the night watch posted at the outer wall. Jane exhaled, steadying her nerves. Since Robb's return, she had learned to live with the constant tug of dread at his every absence. The dagger dance at the twins haunted her waking hours, a single moment when steel might have skewered destiny forever. Even now the stitches in his side bled if he moved too fast, but she knew the wolf in him would not be kennelled by Maester's orders. She drank the draught with dutiful resolve and sent Garmin to fetch more blankets. When he bowed out, she crossed to the narrow window slit and listened. The wind carried the smell of fresh-cut pine and smoke from the forges, but underneath those scents lay something acrid anxiety that seeped from rampart and hall alike. Below, torchlight bobbed across the lower bailey. Stewards lugging barrels of pitch, quartermasters counting arrow crates by lamplight, blacksmiths plunging half-forged spearheads into troughs that hissed steam. Winterfell was no longer a great house at leisure. It bristled like a hedgehog, ready for teeth to close around it. Jane laid a palm to the chill stone lintel. "Hold," she whispered to her unborn son. "Hold, and the north will hold with you." On the eastern curtain wall, Robb Stark scooped wind-driven snow from a crenel with the flat of his gauntlet and peered out past the torches. The moon rode half-hidden behind roiling storm clouds, so that each gust scattered light and shadow in equal measure across the white ground. A small party advanced on foot from the King's Road, black cloaks, faces hooded. Jon Snow led them, a tall shadow whose sword belt clanked faintly with each step. Gray wind lifted his muzzle to scent and made a soft rumble of welcome. When they reached the postern, Robb descended the stair too at a bound, ignoring the stab in his flank. He clasped his half-brother's forearm and drew him in beneath the arch. Ice melt dripped steadily from the murder holes, patting their shoulders like impatient fingers. "Trouble?" Robb asked in a voice pitched for no one but the wind. "Trouble," Jon confirmed, "and worse than I feared." Behind him shivered a pair of brothers in the black, Dolorous Ed shrugging snow from his hood, and a younger ranger named Tormay, with eyes as large as walnuts and cheeks cracked by the cold ride. They looked half-starved, but their faces bore hard purpose. Robb ushered them toward the warmth of the mead hall, but Jon wiped a sleeve across his mouth. "Best speak in the Godswood," he said, "where fewer ears linger." Brynden Blackfish nodded and signaled Wylus Manderly to follow. They threaded dark passages until moss-slick walls opened onto the ancient grove. Snow blanketed the grass in irregular lumps, leaving the red branches of the heart tree jagged against a sky the color of split lead. Robb dismissed the sentries and waited. Jon drew breath and let it frost before his lips. "We lost a range party beyond the Shadow Tower," he said. "No tracks leading out, no blood, no sign besides the ashes of a dead fire." Later, one of the horses turned up, gutted, frozen hard enough to shatter if struck. Whatever took the men, carved the beast. Brynden's mouth tightened. "Free folk. No wildling steel carves like that," Jon said. "And the wounds were cold." He glanced at the weirwood face, whose sap tears gleamed dark in torchlight. "Colder than the wall." Robb felt gooseflesh ripple across his shoulders despite the fur cloak. "White walkers," Tormay's chimney pipe voice cracked. "The dead, your grace. One of the men we lost, Ser Jamin, he came back night after. Blue eyes. He cut down Brother Owen afore we lit him a fire." Gray wind growled low, ears flat. Robb stroked his ruff. "If the dead ride, we must hold together, lion, wolf, stag, and rose. Yet I scarce keep Boltons from my throat." Jon's expression shuddered, but he forced a nod. "I come to warn the South as well, but the king beyond the wall has stirred his people. Tens of thousands mass at Frostfangs, and Tormund Giantsbane claims a horn to bring the wall down." "Old tales," Brynden muttered. "Tales gain fangs when the dead walk," Jon replied. "And if Mance Rayder finds a breach, the free folk flood through while we fight among ourselves." Robb flexed his bandaged arm. "We need the Vale, the Riverlands, every spear. But first I must gut the Dreadfort and end Bolton treachery." Jon shook his head. "Even if you cut Roose down tomorrow, more wars brew. Tyrell and Martell sharpen knives while Lannister coffers thin. Harrenhal lies half empty, ripe for Sel's words. And across the sea, dragons grow." The word hissed like brand on flesh. Robb remembered dead Dothraki in tales and the ashen ruin of kings before Aegon's breath. How sure is the Wall of Dragons? Jon hesitated. Ravens bring rumor only, but I have seen shadows on the snowfields. Dark wings broad as ship sails, much too high for eagles. Silence thickened until Dolorous Ed let out a sigh. When men begin counting dragons, it's time to pray. Robb exhaled, white plume merging with the night air. So be it. We face death from north, east, and within. We do as wolves do, gather our pack. He clasped Jon's shoulder. Ride at first light to King's Landing. You will bear my seal and my plea. Tell Tywin Lannister the king in the north summons every bannerman of the realm to Winterfell. Let them call it a great council, a peace moot, whatever spares pride. But they must come. Brynden coughed. Invite Tyrells, Dornish, even Ironborn? Yes, Robb said, especially Ironborn. I would measure Balon Greyjoy's ambition at sword tip before winter closes every port. Jon's brows furrowed. Will the lion answer? After your mother's death at Fryhands. He grieves, Robb murmured, eyes far set. But Tywin's heart beats gold. He will count costs and see the dead pay none. He turned to Wylis. Ready ravens to every great seat. Offer safe conduct and guest right stronger than steel. By wolf's honor and lion's witness. Grey Wind lifted his muzzle to the sky and howled. The other kennel wolves answered. The sound seemed to tremble the heart tree's carved face. Snow sifted from limbs like old scabs of memory. In the Tower of the Hand, Tywin Lannister read Robb Stark's Raven before dawn bell. Candle stubs sputtered beside quills dulled to nubs on parchment scratchings of numbers. New debts owed bravos, grain tallies, Sel's word advances. When he finished the letter, he closed his eyes and let silence settle like dust. Cersei swept in unannounced, silk gown hissing. Another plea from the wolf pup? She sneered. Let him howl. We have a realm to govern. Tywin handed her the parchment. She scanned and scoffed. A council in that ruin of a castle? In winter, Ned Stark's whelp forgets his manners. Read the second leaf, Tywin said. Her eyes moved, then stopped. White walkers, she quoted. Child's tales. And free folk massing is the wall's worry, not ours. Tywin folded hands. Tales hold more weight when dead men walk into keeps and murder sworn brothers. I've seen stranger things break kingdoms. Prophets, succession rumors, plague. Ice revenants could shatter more than bones. Cersei tossed the letter to the desk. Even if ghosts crawl across the wall, what power have we? Dragons and others fever dreams. Dreams, he said. Ruined Valyria once. He rose and strode to the hearth, staring into coals. If Stark's tidings prove true, and we ignore, the people will scream of Lannister arrogance when corpses knock at their gates. She opened her mouth. He raised a hand. Send ravens to Highgarden, Sunspear, Pike. We convene at Winterfell before the next moon. I ride with the king and my host at once. The Queen Regent will remain to guard the capital. Cersei's face froze, then cracked in fury. You leave me here to fend off sparrows and Tyrell plots? You will have the City Watch and Lord Giles Rosby's regiments, Tywin said. Enough. He turned away to ring for his squire. Conversation ended. In the gallery outside, Tyrion lurked behind a pillar, polishing a ruby-ended cane. He stepped out as Cersei stormed past. Sister, you look flushed. The morning suits you. She glared daggers and swept away. Tyrion's grin slipped. He tapped the letter copy tucked in his sleeve pocket. Ice demons, dragons, drowned gods. It made a fine jest until he pictured Shay's terrified face at a barred window while the sky burned. That night he penned his own ravens to Bronn at Stokeworth, instructing a quiet purchase of salt pork and hardtack enough to feed the capital one winter's turn. If the world was to end, he intended King's Landing to starve last. At Sunspear, Princess Arianne Martell lounged upon a tiled balcony as bright sails glittered on the sea. The raven from King's Landing perched upon the arm of Captain Miles. She read Tywin's seal, flicked a pomegranate seed with a fingernail, and smiled. "Winterfell beckons," she murmured. "A cold den for southern vipers." Miles grinned. "Shall we bring the snake's teeth?" "All of them." She rose, scent of orange blossom swirling. "The old lion calls for unity against ghosts. Dornish steel will answer, for my father's justice and my brother's revenge." In the palace below, Ser Quentyn counted barrels of Dornish red, unaware that when the banquet came he would sit across from ironborn reavers and smile behind goblet rims. Upon the longship Ghastly Daughter, Asha Greyjoy scanned the grey chop of the Iron Man's Bay. A gull perched on the prow, staring like a spy from the Seven. Her uncle Victarion strode beside her, face half-veiled by salt spray. The raven from Winterfell had reached Naga's Hill 3 nights before, and Balon Greyjoy mocked the notion of parley. But Asha remembered her brother Theon's letters. A boy who served Starks and loved them, a man who failed them. She felt ghost fingers at her throat whenever she recalled the charred bodies hung in Winterfell's courtyard. "Stark offers safe guest right," she told Victarion. Her uncle spat overboard. "Guest right did not save Fry throat." "Nor Fry treachery," Asha replied. "If we ignore call, the North may sail south come spring when Pact is strong. Better to read the board before they flip it." Victarion's eyes burned iron red in dawn's slant. "The Kraken bows to no wolf. The Kraken swims storms cunningly," she countered. "Let us send words of grudging acceptance, sail with lean crews, learn what storms brew. If dead men march, the drowned god commands we flood their path." Victarion snorted, but the sea's spray hissed like agreement. 3 weeks later, Winterfell's courtyards crawled with color. Green roses of Tyrell, golden sun of Martell, white wyverns of Arryn, and iron krakens, all planted in wind-whipped drifts of snow. Cooks butchered boar and goat. Cauldrons bubbled with fish chowder thick enough to stand a spoon in. Carpenters hammered new stalls beside the stable for the Tyrell chargers. Dornish spearmen erected silk awnings bright as parrot feathers. Robb paced the roll yard with Bran beside him in a pull-cart harness drawn by gentle gelding. The boy's eyes roved every new banner. "Looks like a tourney," he said quietly. "Let's pray it ends better," Robb muttered. Day by day, lords clattered through the gatehouse. First Lord Randall Tarley in brown and green oak leaves, delivering Tyrell courtesy. Then Edric Dane for House Martell. Peter Baelish on a dapple grey, all smirks and velvet. Ser Balon Swan for the crown. And from the Eyrie, bronze-armored Ser Lynn Corbray escorting Lady Anya Waynwood in lieu of sickly Lord Robert. Ghostly snow muffled the horses' hooves, as though the north itself urged hush. Jon Snow arrived 2 days ahead of Tywin, bearing Queen Marjorie's pleas for alliance. He brought also 2 wildlings, Tormund Giantsbane, grinning, red-bearded, reeking of sweat, and the slender spear wife Val, her eyes white as frost. They knelt before no hearth. Robb granted them guest right at the weirwood, and all who watched felt old magic stir. When Tywin's column appeared, a crimson serpent winding across the white plain, trumpets blared from the battlements. He rode at its head in gilded scale, Joffrey beside him swaddled in sable furs, Sansa Stark pale but proud at the king's left. Catelyn's absence yawned like a null in the crowd, but no one spoke her name. Tywin dismounted, kissed Jane's hand with grave courtesy, and clasped Robb's arm as though they had never crossed sword points. Some Northmen spat in snow quietly. Tywin pretended not to notice. That night, by wolf-warmed hearth, 300 lords crowded in the great hall. The fire crackled so fiercely sparks climbed the rafters. At the dais, Robb stood on one side of the weirwood throne, Tywin on the other, and between them sat Jon in Night's Watch blacks, sword Longclaw across his knees. Robb began. A brief recounting of White Walkers, missing rangers, the gutted horse. Gasps rippled when he described blue eyes glowing in skull-dark faces. Then Jon spoke of frozen swords that shattered steel, of an infant's wail echoing in snow-packed valleys, of Mance Raider's gaze fixed south. Tywin watched the hall. His voice when he spoke cut the mutters like cheese wire. "Lords and ladies, I have fought wars for crowns, rivers, and pride. None of those matter if the world itself dies. We cannot face such threat as squabbling dogs. The lion and wolf have shared blood and coin. Now the rose, sun, kraken, falcon, and stag must add their strength. Randyll Tarly stepped forward. We should march at once. Crush Raider before winter deepens. Edric Dane lifted chin. Dorne will not bleed for Northmen's fancies unless proof stands before our eyes. Asha Greyjoy twirled a dagger. Send scouts over the wall. Let Kraken eyes taste this chill. Peter Baelish slipped a polite cough. And who funds a united host of 30,000? Braavos grows impatient. Murmurs swelled into argument until Bran's small voice pierced through. I have seen them. Silence fell. Even torches seemed to pause their sputter. Bran wheeled forward, eyes bright under dark lashes. In dreams, some call them green dreams, though I was awake. I watched them walk the lakes like glass, and the water froze behind. I watched 100 dead ravens rise and blot the moon. I saw a horn blown and the wall cracked. Tywin studied the boy. Dreams are treacherous counselors. Yet I dreamed of my mother's death at the twins as it happened, Bran said quietly. I dreamed of a golden lion weeping blood, and of dragons over Old Town. He looked directly at Tywin. Some dreams bite. The hall murmured like restless sea. Sansa clutched Joffrey's sleeve. Marjorie Tyrell whispered to Ser Loras. The knight's face turned stone. Tormund Giantsbane barked laughter. Dreams or no, the wind tastes wrong. Smells o' long winter. My bones say fight. Val lifted her spear butt. If men of the south help, free folk cross south in peace. We fight the dead together, then talk. Randyll Tarly's jaw clenched. Barbaric hordes wander our fields? They will wander regardless if the wall fails, Jon said. Better allies than enemies behind you. Robb took 2 steps forward, voice ringing. Here is my decree. The houses gathered form a war council. Each commits a levy to march beyond the wall come first thaw. We supply grain from Manderley stores, coin from Lannister coffers, ships from Greyjoy. The Night's Watch commands our host. In the meantime, our smiths reforging every scrap of dragonglass and Valyrian. Whoever shirks shall answer in blood. Tywin did not blink. 30,000 across snowfields. The land starves. My lord, Wyman Manderley boomed, hefting his bulk to stand. White Harbor's granaries bulge. I pledge 10,000 barrels of grain, and take the crown's IOU. Murmurs grew into cheers. Tywin's mouth twitched. Half admiration, half irritation. Very well. The crown accepts the Manderley loan. Balon Greyjoy's envoy, a lean priest of the drowned god, raised a voice like surf. Pike will loan longships for sea lifts, but we claim prisoners for thrall. No thralls, Asha snapped from the gallery. This union stands free. Tywin lifted hand. We defer Ironborn customs until the threat passes. Agreed. The priest grudgingly bowed. Thus the Pact of Winterfell took shape, hammered by fear rather than love. Lords pressed signet into wax while scribes scuttled between tables. The realm's bitterest foes spilled wine in tentative toasts. Somewhere in the milling crowd, Peter Baelish smiled thinly. Chaos always yielded ladders. Deep night settled. Candles guttered low. In the rookery, Bran found Samwell Tarly hunched by a brazier, scratching notes onto parchment scraps. Recipes for wildling arrowheads spiked with dragonglass shards. Bran wheeled close. Will it work?
Summit's cheeks flushed.
The old books say obsidian wounds freeze the walker's magic. If we can embed flakes in arrows, maybe we fell more than swords alone. Bran nodded slowly. Did you see my dream? He whispered.
Sam swallowed.
What dream? Dragons over Old Town. Bran's eyes unfocused. Their shadows blacked the Hightower. One breathed green fire.
Sam's quill shook.
Hightower's beacon is green. Then maybe it wasn't fire, Bran murmured. Maybe light summoned by maesters. Sam stared at flickering brazier. Or wildfire caches hidden in vaults, if Aerys left secrets. Their gazes met, and shared dread needed no words. In Winterfell's gods would Tywin knelt before the heart tree at dawn. The red leaves quivered though wind stilled. The face wept sap along pale bark. He studied it as he would an adversary's expression. "Your north breathes raw and strong," he murmured, unsure why he spoke aloud. Perhaps he feared the old gods might he'd only spoken truth. "I gird the realm for storms, yet storms breed wilder storms. If I err, legacy ends with ash." Snowflakes drifted, catching silver in his hair. He closed eyes briefly, perhaps praying though he denied superstition. When he stood, a figure stepped from behind the trunk. Bran Stark, small and still. "Do you seek forgiveness?" the boy asked. Tywin's stare froze. "Forgiveness is for the weak. I seek victory." Bran cocked head. "Then gird yourself for loss." Tywin's lip twitched. "You think me doomed, boy?" "I think all men carry their doom," Bran said. "Some keep it hidden, some wear it bright as a crown." He wheeled away, leaving tracks in fresh snow. Tywin watched, unsettled by a 9-year-old moving like prophecy. He touched the heart tree's wet bark, sticky, warm like blood, and wiped his fingers on a handkerchief as he departed. Preparations consumed the days. Smelters brewed molten iron to cast SPE. Arrowheads. Glassblowers at White Harbor fashioned obsidian tips shipped down from the Volcano Islands by Bravosi merchants. Tyrell engineers constructed traction trebuchets able to hurl dragonglass barrels. Dornish sand steed herders taught northern riders to handle swift mounts in light snow. Mages from Ashai, bought by Baelish gold, arrived to consult on dragon lore. But war clouds to the south darkened. News leaked of storms and riots after grain shipments redirected north, of riverlords rebelling at Lannister tax levies, of High Septon pronouncing the Pact unholy for admitting wild sorcerers and unbaptized barbarians. Spymaster Varys whispered through his little birds that the faith militant armed nightly. One midday, as Robb trained in the yard, a raven shrieked overhead and dropped a sealed scroll almost at his feet. Crest of three-headed dragon, black ink running in snow. He broke the seal and read. Eyes widened. Quickly he beckoned Jon, Tywin, Marjorie. Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen announced arrival at Dragonstone with 3 full-grown dragons and a fleet of 200 ships from Volantis. She proclaimed intent to light the Blackwater with Dawnfire and reclaim the Iron Throne, yet offered truce if the realm united beneath her banner against the fell spirits awakening in the far north. She invited envoys to treat at Dragonstone beneath Dragon Wing. Tywin's jaw set. The realm chokes on alliances enough. Now fire breathes at our neck. Jon's face was unreadable. If she means peace against the dead, we cannot refuse. Robb exhaled. She holds dragons, one of few blades that cut ice. But Marjorie's hand trembled where it gripped her shawl. Dragons burn wheat fields. If she comes, we starve. Tywin lifted his eyes from the letter. We split council. I sail with a delegation to Dragonstone, one representative from each major house. We test her promises and her sanity. His gaze fell on Jon. You speak of ice. Speak too to fire. Jon straightened. I will go. Robb nodded. Take Davos Seaworth's black ships from White Harbor. They know those currents. Tormund guffawed. Crowboy visits a dragon queen. Hope she likes scrawny.
Valsmirket.
Or she'll eat him first come winter. Tywin raised soundless eyebrow. Already his mind computed. If dragons join lion and wolf, victory soared. If dragons turned, Winterfell became ash. But he banked on calculation as ever. 5 days before sailing, a storm hammered Winterfell. Hailstones the size of quails smashed tower windows. Lightning forked above the weirwood, turning snow to glassy crust. In the tumult, Bran slipped into a dream. He soared high above the castle, gray wings beating. Ravencrow this time, not wolf. Far off he saw the wall, black ribbon under swirling snow. Figures moved along its top like ants. One held a horn carved of old weirwood, stops set with gold. When the figure blew, the wall rang like a giant bell. Cracks spidered from crest to base. Blue light spilled. and through ice gale soared white shapes with eyes of starfire. Bran woke gasping. Summer lay across his legs, whining. Dawn's first gray seeped around shutters. Bran swung to floor, calling for Maester Garmin. The Maester hurried with lamp. Bran recounted the dream. As he spoke, thunder rolled and another window shattered. Garmin's face blanched. A horn. Bittersteel's writings mention the horn of Joramun, said to wake giants and break the wall. Then Mance Rayder seeks it, Bran said. Tell them. Garmin left at once. Bran wheeled after him, but a gout of wind smashed the corridor door wide, knocking him back. Summer barked. Bran felt the beast's breath fill his lungs. They shared vision for an instant. Wall ice collapsing, dead tides surging. He had to reach Robb, had to change the plan. Downstairs, Jon buckled sea cloaks into a chest. Robb inspected war maps with Tywin and Marjorie. Bran burst into the chamber. Words flew, a tangle of dream and dread. Tywin scoffed. Marjorie's lip trembled. But Jon believed, eyes shadowed. If Mance has the horn, he murmured. We cannot wait for spring. He turned to Tywin. Delay parley. We ride tonight. Tywin exhaled through nose. Ride where? Into a blizzard. To the wall. Robb answered for him, expression steel. I lead. No, Tywin said flatly. Wounded, you die on the road. I command Lord Tarly's heavy horse and Martell light riders. They march with Jon under Night's Watch livery. I ride to Dragonstone as planned. If dragons will come, they come. Robb bristled. You would claim glory while sending my brother to freeze? You would send the realm's sole cohesive leader into death? Tywin shot back. Bran's voice cut them. Both must ride. Fire and ice converge. Only together. Silence. Wind moaned outside. Finally Tywin faced Robb. We leave tomorrow. I take half the host south, you half north. That is the compromise. Robb inclined head reluctantly. Jon clasped hands with his brother. Their eyes said what words could not. Before dawn the columns divided on the wintry plain. 40 banners veering south toward White Harbor's ships, 40 rolling north along the King's Road. From a tower balcony Jane watched Robb and Jon disappear into swirling spindrift. Her son kicked within, as though sensing the thinning thread that tethered father to hearth. Sansa stood beside her, fingers tight about the balustrade, eyes on Joffrey's plumed helm vanishing with the southern host. It always ends like this, Sansa murmured. Men march away and we count the candles till they burn out. Jane nodded. But this time we light more candles. They turned and followed the women's train to the sept, where northern maids, Dornish ladies, and Reach handmaids knelt shoulder to shoulder, strangers before the stranger, praying for sons, husbands, lords, and kings who strode toward different fires. Southbound, Tywin's fleet raised sail under gray skies whipped white. On deck Jon stood with Davos at the prow. Gulls wheeled overhead, diving at wave crests. The Lannister flagship rocked, timbers groaning. Davos pointed across the dark chop. See that faint line? Dragonstone's peaks. Been there in worse fog. Keep heart. Jon listened to the wind, half fearing he might hear wings. Somewhere ahead a queen waited with living fire. Behind him, death marched on frozen feet. He gripped Longclaw's pommel. The world balanced on a blade, and he upon its edge. Northbound, Robb pushed his host hard, camping little, fording iced rivers with ropes and planks. Tormund's laughter cracked the cold. Val's spear tracked every flicker of movement among tree shadows. At Queen's Crown they found a hamlet butchered, dead thawed only long enough to limp, then refreeze by morning. Obsidian arrows pinned 3 corpses to a barn door, glowing faintly in moonshine. Robb's men whispered prayers. At Mole's Town they met rangers battered, fleeing south. Giants cracked the Nightfort's causeway. Ghouls clambered over shattered blocks, a horn's echo wailing. Jon was not there to hear. Robb pressed on, heart clenching with each mile. In Dragonstone's smoldering audience chamber, Daenerys Targaryen approached the Lion Lord. Drogon loomed behind, wings half unfurled. Embers drifted from his nostrils. Tywin stepped without falter, though eyes watered at sulfur stench. They spoke of alliances, of undead in the north and betrayal in the south. She demanded fealty, he demanded trust, and when debate reached stalemate, Tyrion stepped forth. "My queen," he said, for he named her thus. "Ice is patient. Fire must be less so." He knelt, offering a hand full of broken chains. "We may forge peace with these links, or hang by them." Daenerys listened. Midnight passed before torches guttered. In the end, she swore to fly north, and Tywin swore to open the Blackwater gates to her fleet. History shifted like ice cracking on a turgid river. On the wall, Maester Aemon poured steaming mulled wine into a chipped cup and pressed it to Sam's trembling hands. "Ravens from Eastwatch speak of ships lost," the old man whispered. "Winds too fierce, waves like mountains." Sam gulped, liquid scalding his tongue. "What of the king's host?" "Not yet sighted." Aemon's filmy eyes gleamed with tears of cold or grief. "But Mance marshals now. He sent outriders south of the Skirling Pass." Sam's knees went weak. "Then the horn." "It was found," Aemon said, voice barely wind. "And soon it will sound." Sam clenched the cup until knuckles whitened. "We need them here now." Aemon turned gaze skyward. "Prey dragons fly faster than ravens." Night deepened in the haunted forest as Robb's vanguard encamped. Fires ringed with stone flicked amber across tired faces, and gray wind prowled the perimeter, hackles raised. Robb sat with Bran beside a stump, studying a scrap of weirwood bark Bran had demanded be carved with sigils. Wolf, lion, sword, and snowflake. "What is it?" Robb asked. "A promise," Bran said. "To remember we stand together." Robb slid the charm onto a leather thong and tied it at his neck. "Then together we remain." Somewhere north a horn muttered 3 long notes, deep and mournful, rolling like thunder across endless ice. The camp fell silent. In the hush Robb gripped his brother's hand. Summer and gray wind howled as one. And high above, the aurora flared green across a sky as black as the secrets it kept. Men lifted eyes to light and saw therein dragons and death, hope and ruin. The greatest war in 1,000 years blew upon them like the first breath of winter, cold, unrelenting, absolute. And within that breath each mortal soul felt its own small heat blaze, defiant as the flames of a single torch in a storm too vast for counting. Thus the long night's opening chord sounded. Not with the clash of steel, but with a wolf's howl, a dragon's shadow, and the shiver of kingdoms standing shoulder to shoulder on the edge of a darkness older than their names.